Is there any chance I could ask you a question?
Go on then.
Right. Let's start with the unambiguously racist remarks made by one of your own volunteers, Andrew Parker. Let you explain yourself. There's a number of things in that. There's not actually anything in that that says that you know that this was a setup. But what I think is even more interesting...
He does what he calls rough speaking, all right? I was there working in the office in Essex when he turned up. And he was, from the moment he walked through the room, like a version of Alf Garnett.
Ever felt like you were being unfairly attacked with no way to defend yourself? That's exactly how many viewers felt Nigel Farage was treated in his recent interview with Trevor Phillips. But Farage didn't just sit there and take it. Before we move on, I'd like to ask you a small favor. If you appreciate this content, please take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Over 98% of you watch the videos without subscribing. It costs you nothing, but it makes a huge difference to us. So, did you click the subscribe button? Great. Thank you so much. Now, to the video. Instead, he did something that left audiences cheering. He fought back with facts, exposing the hypocrisy of his accuser and challenging the very foundations of modern political discourse.
We've had 14 years of Conservative government, a mega majority in 2019, which I significantly helped them to obtain. Millions of those voters...
I've made that point this morning, by the way.
...utterly betrayed. If I'd stayed at home, if I'd gone to the Bahamas fishing for the month...
Now, you said this is a setup.
I know it is.
Do you have a single shred of proof?
Well, I'll tell you who he is. He's an actor, OK, number one.
All sorts of people are actors. That's not proof that this was a setup. Have you got any proof?
Keir Starmer would have won a big majority anyway. And many of our voters, if they're polled and spoken to, if we weren't here, wouldn't vote for anybody.
How did he do it? And what can we learn from his approach? Trevor Phillips, the British media's pit bull, was ready to sink his teeth into Nigel Farage. Known for his relentless interviewing style, Phillips had cornered many a politician before, leaving them squirming under the hot studio lights. This time, he had Farage in his crosshairs, and the tension in the room was thick enough to cut with a knife. As the cameras rolled, Phillips wasted no time. He came out swinging, accusing Farage of enabling racism within his political movement. It was a classic Phillips move. Start with a bombshell and watch your guests scramble. Farage, to his credit, didn't flinch. He sat there, listening as Phillips laid out his case, his face a mask of calm. Viewers at home held their breath.
You know me well enough. We've known each other 20 years. You know that I fought harder than anyone to drive the BNP out as an electoral force, and I did so with
I've got a bone to pick with you about that, but we'll come back to that later.
Success.
What was it about you, Nigel Farage, that first attracted these racists and homophobes and anti-Semites to your party?
Well, the candidates that we're kicking out. I led 29 MEPs into the European Parliament 5 years ago. It was the most diverse group from any country in Europe.
Wondering how Farage would respond to such a serious accusation. But then, something unexpected happened. Instead of crumbling under the weight of Phillips's attack, Farage calmly turned the tables. He pointed out Phillips's own controversial history, including a suspension from Labour for Islamophobic comments. It was like watching a chess master make a brilliant counter-move. Suddenly, the accuser became the accused, and Phillips found himself on unfamiliar ground, the defensive. The irony was palpable. Here was Phillips, trying to paint Farage as a racist enabler, while his own past was far from spotless. It was a classic case of the pot calling the kettle black, and Farage wasn't about to let it slide. He highlighted the hypocrisy with surgical precision, leaving Phillips visibly flustered. As Phillips struggled to regain control of the narrative, it became clear that this interview wasn't going according to plan. Farage, far from being the easy target Phillips had anticipated, was proving to be a formidable opponent. By exposing Phillips's own controversial history, Farage had effectively neutralized the accusations against him. It was a masterclass in media management, turning what was meant to be an ambush into a showcase of quick thinking and factual rebuttals. The first round of their verbal sparring had come to a close, and it was clear that Phillips had underestimated his opponent. Farage, often portrayed as a controversial figure in British politics, had shown himself to be resilient and well-prepared. As viewers watched in fascination, They realized that this interview was far from over. Farage was just getting started, and Phillips was in for a long night. As the dust settled from Phillips's initial attack, Farage's eyes gleamed with a newfound determination. The tables were about to turn, and Phillips was in for a rude awakening. Farage, often portrayed as a controversial figure, was about to show why he had survived and thrived in the cutthroat world of British politics for so long. With the precision of a surgeon, Farage began dismantling Phillips's arguments one by one. He didn't just defend himself, he went on the offensive, armed with facts and figures that seemed to catch the seasoned interviewer off guard. It was as if Farage had been preparing for this moment his entire career, and now he was unleashing years of pent-up frustration at the media's portrayal of him. The audience watched in awe as Farage cited specific instances where he had actively worked against racism within his political movements. He spoke of policies implemented during his leadership of UKIP and later the Brexit Party, aimed at distancing these organizations from extremist elements. Phillips, clearly not expecting such a detailed and factual rebuttal, attempted to interrupt, but Farage stood his ground, refusing to be derailed from his point-by-point dissection of the accusations against him. As Farage gained momentum, the atmosphere in the studio began to shift. What had started as an ambush was quickly turning into a masterclass in media management. Viewers at home leaned in closer to their screens, sensing that something extraordinary was unfolding before their eyes. Then, just when it seemed the interview couldn't get any more intense, Farage dropped a bombshell that left the studio in stunned silence. He revealed that Phillips himself had used a racial slur during a prior discussion, exposing a glaring hypocrisy that shocked viewers and sparked immediate backlash on social media. The revelation hit like a thunderbolt, leaving Phillips visibly shaken and struggling to form a coherent response. The irony was palpable. Here was Phillips, who had built a career as an advocate for racial equality, caught using the very language he had accused others of enabling. It was a moment that perfectly encapsulated the complexities and contradictions of modern political discourse. As the interview neared its end, it was clear that what was meant to be an ambush had turned into something entirely different. Farage's calm and methodical dismantling of Phillips's arguments, coupled with his strategic handling of high-pressure situations, had transformed the narrative. Expert analysis suggests that politicians like Farage, who engage directly with tough questions and accusations, can reshape public perception and trust, especially in an era where many leaders avoid confrontational interviews altogether. In the end, Farage had not just defended himself, he had turned the tables on his accuser and challenged the very foundations of how political figures are questioned and portrayed in the media. It was a performance that would be studied and debated for years to come. A reminder that in the world of politics, the ability to think on your feet and counterpunch effectively can be the difference between triumph and disaster. The Farage-Phillips showdown serves as a stark reminder of the complexities lurking beneath the surface of modern political discourse. While accusations of racism should always be taken seriously, this encounter highlights the dangers of throwing stones in glass houses. Phillips, armed with his reputation as a tough interviewer, found himself outmaneuvered by Farage's quick wit and factual rebuttals. But beyond the immediate drama, this interview raises deeper questions about the nature of public discourse in our digital age. Can any public figure truly escape their past when every word and action is scrutinized and archived? The public's reaction to the interview suggests a growing weariness with confrontational interview styles. Many viewers criticized Phillips's approach as an orchestrated attack rather than a balanced discussion, reflecting a shift in what audiences expect from political interviews. In an era where trust in traditional media is waning, perhaps it's time for a new approach, one that values genuine conversation over scripted attacks and seeks understanding rather than gotcha moments. As we move forward, both interviewers and politicians alike would do well to remember that in the court of public opinion, authenticity often trumps aggression.